What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Monday, May 15th, 2017, halfway through the month here, and we've got lots of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Today, of course, day after Mother's Day. It's also Nakba Day, and Claire and I took a little bit of a mini staycation. We kind of pulled back from the politics for the weekend because we were so fried and everything. We come back here Monday, and oh man, it's just everything's falling apart out there. So let's get into it. Obviously, the WannaCry variants are still ravaging across the globe. What's really interesting, I'm not seeing a lot of this on the corporate media. And this is an important story. It's impacting businesses like FedEx and hospitals in Great Britain. Now, over the weekend, something rather interesting happened. Over in Britain, there's this 22-year-old blogger, still lives with his parents, and he discovered a kill switch inside the WannaCry malware. And it was really very simple. The WannaCry was going out and searching for a domain that did not exist. So this blogger just said, okay, I'm going to register the domain, and as soon as it showed up in the DNS, the WannaCry stopped propagating. Now, unfortunately, the machines that are already infected and encrypted are still infected and encrypted, but it stopped it dead. And interestingly enough, I mean, this is a real head scratcher. You've got this one guy, 22 years old, was able to stop this thing in its track. And the NSA could not, the CIA could not, the FBI could not. This one guy working on the outside crippled it. Now, does that mean the NSA, CIA, and FBI are hopelessly inept? Or is WannaCry part of an operation to cripple the Internet ahead of some grand war escalation? Or were NSA, CIA, FBI, whoever, just stealing some extra party cash for themselves? Because there's a lot of money involved when you look at the number of infections. Or is it maybe all of the above? But it is absolutely astounding that this one guy was able to find and stop WannaCry. Now, the problem is not over because already there's a new version out there. And it does have a kill switch, but this one will not stop it. It only slows it down for some reason. They're still out there. And with all the heat that is coming down on the authors of this weapon, you would think maybe they would sort of pull back, but no, they're still out there pushing it. Whoever they are, they feel they're protected. They feel that nobody is ever going to come to arrest them. And that means it may indeed be a nation state. So over the weekend, we were getting a lot of warnings. The new version was coming on out almost as soon as the 22-year-old found the kill switch. And Europol was out there saying that there was a concern. A lot of businesses were going to start business this morning, turn on their computers, and find that they were locked up with the ransomware, and some did. And the consensus of opinion among the security experts is this is not over. And it is causing all kinds of havoc. Apparently, the Bank of China, their ATMs are now shut down because this ransomware has just crippled China. It's crippled Russia. It's all over Russia. In fact, Russia so far seems to be the heaviest hit of any nation on Earth. Oddly enough, the U.S. is rather, so far, immune to this. But it underscores that you might want to think about having a plan for when the ATMs don't work, which means you might want to start thinking about keeping more of your cash at home. Now, Microsoft has come on out slamming the NSA for the mishandling of the exploits. First of all, saying that this harvesting and development and warehousing of these exploits is a disservice to the community. Because when you find an exploit, the first thing you ought to do is make it known to security experts so it can be protected against. But the NSA, every time they find or develop an exploit, they put it in their little toolbox to use just in case. And they were handling these software tools with a great deal of disregard. Microsoft says this is like letting somebody steal a Tomahawk cruise missile or a nuclear warhead. Look at the damage this one NSA tool is doing across the globe. It's devastating. There should be controls on these NSA exploit kits as rigid as surround nuclear weapons release. Even Putin is out there saying malware created by intelligence services can backfire on its creators. Basically pointing out that the majority of this WannaCry and WannaEncrypt and WannaCry 2.0 are derived from this NSA code. And to underscore the fact of just how vulnerable, what a mess the NSA's created and the CIA's created, WikiLeaks has published 2 more CIA malware, After Midnight and Assassin, that they have been developing to go on out and wreck other people's computers, including, unfortunately, law-abiding citizens and businesses. We're going to do a quick shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, do you remember only last month, the heads of the Five Eyes or Echelon Spying Alliance gathered down in New Zealand for a secret surveillance conference? The timing almost seems too cute. They get together and say, what are we going to do? Everybody knows that we're spying on them. I don't know. Let's bring down the whole internet here. Or blame North Korea, Russia, and China, and Iran. We have to bomb all those people. Now, remember, a while back, I wrote an article called A Virtual 9/11, in which the U.S. government would find a way to cripple the global internet, to basically stop people from talking to each other and then use it as a pretext to go to war against whoever was going to be blamed for this. Because we know false flags are a reality. Even Israel says they're actually more afraid of hacking attacks on their computers than they are of missile attacks. Little bit of embarrassment over in Great Britain. Somebody actually asked Britain's Defense Secretary if the story that the Trident nuclear submarines were running on Windows XP, which is especially vulnerable to this malware, and he refused to either confirm or deny it. But in the end, this massive attack has shown the vulnerability of our networks, of our IT systems. And it isn't that they were designed wrong, it's that they were bored full of holes by the intelligence agencies, and now we are all paying the price for it. Now, I got a letter from Windows has rushed out some patches, including one for XP. For some reason, they didn't have one for Windows 7. But I got an email from a listener saying that the Windows 10 64-bit patch for the WannaCry ransomware attack will not install on their system. And there's a lot of problems with install. A lot of the Windows 7 and Windows 8 people turned off automatic updates during that episode when Microsoft was trying to force Windows 10 on all of us. And now we're trying to turn them back on to get the security updates, and it won't work because apparently Microsoft changed something with the Windows update, and now it won't work. It just sits there and churns, and a lot of people have sent in suggestions about how to fix it, and I've tried them, and it still doesn't work, and at this point, it's more trouble than it's worth here. All right, we're going to take some phone calls. Bob in Indiana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Bob in Indiana, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine. What is on your mind today?
Is there a book out there about the JFK incident that is just as good as the new Pearl Harbor book was for 9/11?
There are several. There's a lot of good books out about JFK, and I would say starting with Jim Garrison's On the Trail of the Assassins would be a good one. But you can do a web search, and you can find a lot of books. In fact, On the Trail of the Assassins was the basis for the script for Oliver Stone's film JFK, which is very, very accurate.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch over to Lou in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, aloha. Guten Morgen. Wie geht's?
Gut, wie geht's es Ihnen?
All right, hey, Mike. I was wanting to know. Thing is, I may not be able to listen to your excellent show at various times, during the week because I have to, leave for work, at a certain time and everything. What would you recommend for a good, reliable news website to listen to, for news and stuff?
Well, first of all, I discourage anybody listening to the radio show or reading the website when you're at work. That's not fair to your employer. But, of course, go to the Republic Broadcasting website. They post stories there directly, and there's always good content in the streaming player. But, again, it really you should be doing this on your own time in your own home. That's what the podcasts are there for, so that people who are working during the actual broadcast can listen to the show later in the evening.
Yeah, because this is before I go to work, while I'm still at home, because I have to leave kind of early from here because I'm starting to go through more heavy traffic than before because the population out in this nice quiet little town is starting to grow. Okay. The other thing, Mike, with all things considered about what's going on with our computers and stuff, I have Macintosh, McAfee for my total protection on my computer and stuff. How would you rate that, or would you say there's something better to protect my computer with?
Well, McAfee is pretty good. It went downhill after John McAfee sold off the company. Kaspersky is still very highly rated. There's a lot of other stuff out there like Malwarebytes and Spybot Search and Destroy, and I can imagine all of these companies are rushing to come out with updates to their databases to try and block WannaCry from even getting into your system. So that has to be done at the firewall level. Because once it's installed on your system, things like Spybot Search and Destroy and Malwarebytes are not going to be able to do anything because you're not going to be able to get into your computer. So it has to be done at the firewall level, and if your system can still update, definitely update it. The good news for the Linux people and for the Macintosh people is that WannaCry is designed only to work on Windows platforms at this moment. Who knows what they're going to come up with next?
Okay. And how's Norton looking out there?
Norton went through the same thing as McAfee. When Peter Norton was still running the place, it was really good stuff. I tried Norton a while ago. I didn't really like it, so I don't know about the current version, but I wasn't happy with it when I had it.
Okay. And McAfee, you say, still has much to be considered with the new ownership?
Well, I don't use McAfee, so I'm really not in a position to say.
Right. Okay. But basically, even I could be affected with what the NSA is doing, with their experiments and such.
Oh, yeah, we're all wide open. We're all wide open. The government has mandated backdoors in our software, in our operating systems, at the board level, in the routers. Our computer security looks like Swiss cheese thanks to these intelligence agencies.
All right. Well, yeah, okay, Mike. You know what? Danke schön, for your show and stuff. Like I say, I'll just try to, catch you and stuff whenever I can during the week. It's just that, I just need to leave a little more earlier than usual now because, traffic concerns going to work and stuff,
Okay, well, again, that's what the podcasts are for. Thank you very much for the phone call here. We're going to switch over to Joseph in Texas. Joseph, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, that latest rocket launch in North Korea. I don't think that's the right word. It's strange to say, but do you think Putin did another good chess move with? Do you think he told basically North Korea, hey, fire it over here if you want to test it out to see if it's okay? Because if it lands in our water, the U.S. can't go recover it, and sort of, because the Russians' response to it was, oh, we're not concerned, and usually that means that they're kind of into, you know, they kind of already they kind of plan already know what's going on.
Well, first of all, I had not heard that Putin had made that offer to North Korea, and this most recent test did wind up crashing into the Sea of Japan.
Yeah, but it was closer to Russia, right? It was like 60 miles off Russia, so that's like their. I mean, the U.S. ain't gonna be able to go over there and recover it. You know what I mean? I know that's Russia's little sphere. They can go over there and they don't have to worry about it.
If it's the Sea of Japan, then yes, either the Japanese Navy or the American Navy can try and recover whatever's left. I don't imagine there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of anything left to pick up because it wasn't a soft landing. But as far as Putin telling Kim Jong-un, conduct your tests into our territorial waters, I had not heard that taking place. So
the only reason I say that is because the Russian mindset and the leadership is they look at themselves not as a unilateral world.
At this point, you're guessing.
No, because they've already but they said that. He said that.
Where did they say that? Where did they say that?
Well, he has said it. He has said it in a speech. That's why he doesn't like us going into Syria and going into Iraq.
All right, would you do me a favor? Would you do me a favor? Would you do me a favor? Send me the URL to that speech because I missed that and I would like to verify.
It's not. But you believe that, right?
No, I don't. I don't. First of all, Joseph, thank you. Quiet for a second. First of all, I don't believe anyway because believing will very often be used to take you in the wrong direction. Okay, and again,
I understand that.
Okay, and again, this test did not go into Russian territorial waters. It went into the Sea of Japan, where the Japanese Navy and the American Navy are perfectly free to pick up whatever is still floating on the surface of the impact point. So,
no, but I think you misunderstood me, Mike. I think you misunderstood me about the Russia thing. What I mean is Russia is not going to invade other countries because they don't believe that it's their right. Like the United States could. If another country says, we don't want to do something, and then the U.S. says, well, you're going against our interests, supposedly, then they have a right. That gives them justification. That's what I mean by Russia doesn't believe in a unilateral world. They believe in a multipolar world, because if they believe in a unilateral world, they would be acting like the U.S. And that's their biggest concern with the U.S. is they're mad that they're just going into all these countries and they're just violating international law. And Russia doesn't believe that because they believe in other people. They believe that there's other people in the world that deserve to be respected, right?
I think what it is that Putin does not want to get into a real shooting war with the United States. Neither does China. Nobody wants to get into a shooting war with the United States. At this point, though, most nations realize it is now inevitable because they're still moving forward with the project for the new American century. And that's the reason North Korea is testing missiles and building nuclear weapons, is in order to prevent a U.S. invasion. So anyway, Joseph, we're going to let you go. We're coming up on a commercial break here, and we're going to start with Fran in Washington, and I may have to take you through the commercial break. What is on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Aloha nui nui.
Aloha.
Hey, it would be helpful if people knew about Ron Gibson posting your shows every evening, Pacific time, about 5 p.m., and that's when it kind of starts, but it's daily, and it's a compressed version of your show. Now, possibly conflict of interest means you cannot talk about it, but I can. So these people that don't have the time in the day, like me, and, well, I'm a little older than you, actually, can go to YouTube in their evening or at their leisure, middle of the night, whatever. It's still there.
Well, actually, there is a little icon on my website that goes to the Ron Gibson page. Thank you very much, Fran. We're going to let you go here, take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take one more phone call. Then we're going to close the phone lines for a while because I got a lot of news I need to really get through here. So, Mo in Florida, aloha. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Michael. Michael, aloha. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say, first of all, an observation. I think that and then I want to ask you a quick question and get your thoughts on just on the second part. But, you know, the first thing, what gets me is, you remember when George Bush, Papa Bush came out in the Super Bowl and he got a standing ovation? That was so discouraging to me. I thought I was going to throw up. I mean, is that how, are we just that small? How could he not be booed? And they're throwing water bottles at him and stuff. I mean, it's so pathetic. That tells you how asleep this country is, doesn't it?
Well, I didn't actually see that. So the first question would come to my mind is if they tinkered with the audio track. Because we have caught them tinkering with audio tracks when politicians are putting on an appearance where they'll add a lot of cheering and clapping and applauding to make up for silence or to cover up the fact that there may be some booing. Again, these days in the corporate media, you cannot trust anything that you see, and we actually had a couple of stories over the weekend that underscore that. One was showing this guy who makes these incredibly realistic, lifelike silicone masks, which somebody could put on, and from a distance, you don't know it's a mask. You think it's the person that the mask represents, like Donald Trump. And the other one was apparently some people in Germany have made some major improvements to this software where they can track a video and make the mouth and face do whatever they want in terms of saying things and facial expressions. And it is really eerie looking at it. And obviously corporate media is going to be acquiring these tools because they're in the business of convincing you of things that are not real.
Well, you would know, being from your background.
Yes.
The other part I was going to ask Michael is, the survivors of the USS Liberty attack, you know, were shut down by, what was it, Johnson, and then they got some kind of posthumous medal in the Navy Yard. Just an insult to these valiant. They were real heroes fighting the whole story, the USS Liberty. This would be a litmus test for Trump. Why doesn't he make up for what Johnson did and give these guys a full honor in front of the country? If he didn't do that, what does it tell you, Michael?
It tells you that the Israel stranglehold on the government is still very real and very, very powerful. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the Liberty survived a sneak attack by an ally, and it was all covered up and hushed over. Captain McGonigal received the Congressional Medal of Honor, and it was the only Congressional Medal of Honor not awarded by the President himself at the White House. It was awarded to him in a private ceremony at the Navy Yard where the public and press were kept on out. It was an insult to those crew members of the USS Liberty, and many of them were decorated, but they were also told, if you talk about this to anybody, you are going to military prison and you're never coming out. And the mastermind of that cover-up was Admiral John McCain, father of Senator Songbird McCain.
Well, I demand Trump to give these guys their due. It's like the Japanese, prisoners in World War II. I demand him to give these heroes a hearing or a public display of an apology and do it very public, or he's not a patriot. That's what I say, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. I love your show. Bye.
You got it, and it should be soon because, unfortunately, every year goes by, there are fewer and fewer of those survivors left. I understand that they're getting another get-together because next month we're coming up again on the anniversary of Israel's attempt to sink the USS Liberty and frame Egypt for it. And they are owed recognition for what they went through. And this would be a good opportunity for Donald Trump to send a message to those who supported him that he really does want to drain the swamp. Because the handling of the USS Liberty incident is one of the stinkiest and deepest parts of that swamp. All right, we're going to close the phone lines for a little while here while I get through some news. Now, the director of the NSA, Admiral Mike Rogers, is out there still screaming, Russia hacked the election, Russia hacked the election. And what he wants to do about it is going to raise hairs on the back of your neck. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. So we're talking about the director of the NSA, Admiral Mike Rogers, and he's out there still screaming about Russia hacked the election, Russia hacked the election, Russia hacked the election. No evidence whatsoever. But they're using it to try and sell the idea that the U.S. intelligence agencies ought to have a wider role in the U.S. elections. In other words, they want to have their fingers on the election process. That's like having Jeffrey Dahmer investigating whether there's cannibalism going on up in Milwaukee. I mean, if you look at the U.S. interfering in elections in other countries, it's always handled through those intelligence agencies. And Rogers specifically made mention of our election, the British election, and the French election. So the NSA wants a direct connection to elections in the U.S., where Donald Trump threw a monkey wrench into the globalist plans, and Great Britain, where Brexit threw a monkey wrench into the globalist plans, and France, where Le Pen almost threw a monkey wrench into the globalist plans. I agree we need a new election system, but letting the intelligence agencies run it absolutely guarantees the end of democracy in this country. Should absolutely be opposed. Now, interesting story coming out of Press TV, no less. Apparently, Donald Trump is considering a major shakeup in the White House staff, possibly going all the way to the Chief of Staff. And this may be Donald Trump reasserting the Donald Trump that we all saw campaigning last year. He may have finally woken up and realized that the people he's got around him are controlling him, corralling him, using him for their own particular agendas, and maybe he's getting ready to do a lot of his "you're fired" spiels. And apparently, according to Press TV, the Chief of Staff, Bannon, and even Sean Spicer are some of the officials who may be included in what's being described as a major reboot, which, I mean, I thought Spicer was doing a good job, to be very honest. But I don't know what's going on inside the White House. But definitely, I think if Trump could get some of those neocon war hawks out, we might actually see a change in direction in this country. We are now getting confirmation. As you know, the Department of Justice is interviewing people as a new head of the FBI. And supposedly Trey Gowdy was at the top of Trump's list. And Trey Gowdy has now said that, yes, he is in fact interested in being the next head of the FBI. And I would sure love to see that happen. Trey Gowdy is one of the very few straight shooters there in Washington, D.C. I've been watching him for a very, very long time. You've all been watching and listening to him. He doesn't believe in bias and cover-up. He goes right for where the crimes are. And I would love to see him in that top position at the FBI. And I'd like to see him clean out that part of the FBI that's involved in political repression, which is a big part of the FBI's job going all the way back to COINTELPRO. Trey Gowdy could actually turn the FBI into the agency we see in the films and TV shows. That would be really good. Now, a whistleblower has come forward saying that while he was still director of the FBI, James Comey seized and buried volumes of information that demonstrated that President Obama was in fact spying on Donald Trump's campaign, and Comey buried it. And now Larry Klayman is filing a Freedom of Information Act for all that information, and pointing out that Comey never acknowledged or acted on this evidence from the whistleblower. Now, Paul Craig Roberts, we've been talking about him a lot. He's out there sounding a warning that elements within the U.S. government are actually seriously considering a nuclear first strike against Russia. And they're literally gambling with the entire country because the group think, the magic think is, we will strike Russia so hard they'll be afraid to retaliate because of our second strike capability. That's really out there. That's sloppy analysis. Paul Craig Roberts is now out there saying that he's getting a sense Trump will not be president much longer. The only question is how Trump will leave office. And this gets down to this rumor, and it is only a rumor, that there is some kind of an indictment, a sealed indictment against Donald Trump for his connections to Russia. And it is sealed, and because he is the president and has executive immunity, it won't be unsealed until after he's out of office. And this, of course, is fodder for the Get Trump people. Oh, there's an indictment. See, there must be something to the Russia connection. There's an indictment. Not necessarily. An indictment is an accusation. Could be totally bogus. But it's being used as a smear campaign. Oh, there's an indictment. It's sealed. We can't tell you what's in it. Can't open it up while Trump is still president, but it's there. So there must be something to the Russia connection. Really out there. Now, remember, we have seen ample documentation, both from within the U.S. government and from within ISIS, that Hillary and Obama backed ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria, which technically amounts to an act of treason, because ISIS and Al-Qaeda, we were told, were our enemies in the war on terror, and giving aid and comfort to the enemy in time of war is treason. And I want you to keep that in mind, because apparently a big part of it is after the overthrow of Gaddafi, weapons were being smuggled from Libya to Syria using that embassy at Benghazi as the hub. That was the smuggling hub. And we'll never know, of course, because it all burned down and all the paper records burned down and there's no evidence left here. But I think something was really there, and even Trump is saying we shouldn't let it out. Remember when I talk about secrets in Washington, D.C., there are two kinds of secrets. There are the little ones, the scandals that can be used as fodder for the political infighting, like what Anthony Weiner was doing on his laptop with underage girls. Then there are the great secrets, the ones that are so horrible that if the American people became aware of them, it would instantly delegitimize the government. The truth behind JFK, the truth behind 9/11, and so forth and so on. And so now we're finding that Judicial Watch is trying to file a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit over the Benghazi records, and the Trump administration is asking the court to have a ruling to keep the information hidden. And that tells us there is something very, very dark and nasty that was going on. Because if nothing was going on, they'd let the records out. Stop fueling suspicion. Getting more and more articles saying it's time to start indicting people. Comey obstructed justice. Hillary Clinton mishandled classified information. Why are these people not yet being arrested? Another very interesting story, very alarming story, because this sort of stuff does go on. This is over at Your News Wire. We were all kind of surprised when Jason Chaffetz, who's another one of the straight shooters in Congress who was going after the corrupt, all of a sudden announced he wasn't going to run for re-election, and then stepped up and said he might not even finish his term. And everyone was saying, what was going on? Something had to be going on behind the scenes. Well, according to this article from Your News Wire, Chaffetz literally was receiving death threats, not just to himself, but to his entire family. And unless he bowed out. And apparently the big issue was not so much his going after the Clinton Foundation and Hillary and email and everything, but his work on trying to get an audit of the Federal Reserve. And according to an unnamed FBI insider, basically he said, you don't go after the Fed. Nobody goes after the Federal Reserve and gets away with it. And again, go back and read All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, and you'll see it time and time again. Anybody who crosses the private central bankers, bad things happen to them. All right, let's get over to the war zones here. Apparently, government forces are making large gains in Aleppo and Damascus. And so they're moving on forward. And the desperation to somehow reverse the trend and get the U.S. back in there and get Assad out is underscored by the fact that they're beginning to drop all this illusion about a moderate rebel and so forth and so on, because there's this story that came on out of Zero Hedge and a bunch of other places. Apparently, ISIS commanders are now working with the so-called moderate Syrian rebels, the ones the U.S. has been supplying. So there never really was a line between them. The moderate rebels was a fiction. to allow the U.S. to arm these terrorists and use them as proxies against Assad. Now, we reported last week that U.S. forces were entering southern Syria. Now they're joined by British forces. And this article at Activist Post is asking, is a bigger battle shaping up? And it could very well be. A video has come on out showing U.S. troops with al-Nusra fighting against the Syrian forces. And the al-Nusra fighters are shouting, Allah Akbar. The U.S. forces are just there pulling the triggers here. So, of course, we had to have some kind of a new BS story, new piece of bovine excrement about why Assad is evil and why we've got to go on in there. We keep hearing all these stories about Assad is killing his own people, Assad is killing his own people. They always turn out to be fake, or they turn out not to actually be any bodies. So they've decided to solve that one. This is all over the place. AP was reporting this, Fox News is reporting this. Syrian regime using crematorium to cover up their mass murders. This is coming from the U.S. State Department, where they're actually saying there's a military prison north of Damascus. And they took a satellite photo of it, and one section of the roof, the snow has melted. That is it. That's all they have. And from there they go to, obviously, there are crematoriums in there, and they're just burning all these bodies to get rid of them to cover up their war crimes. Now, you should look at the photo. It's all over the place. And it is a prison, no question about it. And there is one area of the roof where the snow has melted. How do we know that isn't the kitchen area? How do we know that isn't the prison laundry with all those big dryers putting out all that heat? And remember what I said about look for what should be there and isn't? Look at that photo of the so-called crematorium and tell me what isn't there. Smokestacks. Look at photos of crematoriums, any funeral home in the world. They have big, thick, tall smokestacks because they don't want that smell on the ground. They want to push it way up in the air so the wind will disperse it. There are no big, tall smokestacks over this section of the building. It's just more becks being thrown at you to sell you yet another war. Apparently, Germany is having a major diplomatic dust-up with Turkey. And apparently Turkey refused to allow German politicians to visit the soldiers who are still encircled at Incirlik Air Base. And as a result, Merkel is now withdrawing all German forces from Turkey, just yanking them out. I think that might be a really, really good thing in the long run. All right, so let's talk about North Korea's latest test. And the headlines all over is, oh, new incredible range rocket, new incredible range rocket. Actually, no. It's a mid-range rocket. At its absolute longest range, it can reach 2,000 kilometers. And it certainly does not have the long range of the Taepodong 2 or the Taepodong 3. And even Pacific Command here in Hawaii is saying it really is not an ICBM. It's a medium-range rocket. Now, North Korea is saying it potentially could carry a nuclear warhead, which would be a really good reason not to be invading North Korea. Putin is saying, really, it's the rest of the world intimidating North Korea that's driving this forward. And he's absolutely right. Kim Jong-un is looking at the United States, a country that has invaded, drone-struck, regime changed country after country after country after country, and now obviously has its gun sights on North Korea. Yes, it's going to be making him nervous. And yes, he's going to be doing everything in his power to create a defensive system that will discourage an actual invasion. Now, as you know, the election of Moon Jae-in in South Korea has thrown a major monkey wrench into the works, because Moon Jae-in, on his inauguration, wants to reach across the DMZ and shake Kim Jong-un's hand and say, let's tone this down. This is ridiculous. We're being goaded to fight by powers outside our borders. Let's not get suckered into it. And obviously this pulls the rug out from the U.S. Desire to go on in and regime change North Korea. And so Donald Trump has actually warned the South Korean president not to talk to North Korea. There should be no talks. North Korea does what we say or we will invade, and that's it. I don't think South Korea's president is going to listen to that, because it would be utterly absurd for the United States to all of a sudden discover they have a reason to reinvade South Korea. Now, up at the United Nations, Nikki Haley is out there screaming that Kim Jong-un is in a state of paranoia. He's dangerous. He's paranoid. Yeah, again. Kim Jong-un is looking across the Pacific Ocean at a United States that has killed an estimated 20 million people in 37 different countries since the end of World War II. He knows he is in that government's crosshairs. Of course he's going to be scared. He's going to be paranoid. Who would be in that position who wouldn't be feeling the pressure? Over in Moldova, their president is opposing calls to join NATO, and saying that they actually want to partner with Russia. So there goes another country pivoting to Russia, and another country on the U.S. government's to be invaded special high interest targets list. Meanwhile, Rex Tillerson, in an interview on NBC, is out there saying there's no way to reset Russian relations. We have to move forward. We're moving forward here. We want a new Cold War. We worked for it. We deserve it. And nobody's going to stop us from having it. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to skip on back to the WannaCry malware and its new variant that is out there. And apparently so many people are trying to download the emergency patches. Microsoft's servers are struggling to keep up, and a lot of people are having to wait or go away and come on back. Be very careful about anybody saying you can get the patches at a non-Microsoft website, because you could wind up putting even worse malware on your system. You should never install drivers or patches from third-party websites, because that is a very popular vector for the malware getting on in there. Interesting story, Joe Joseph over the Daily Sheeple is making a comment similar to what I made on Friday when this thing was first surfacing. What if this worm, this NSA worm, instead of carrying ransomware, were carrying other forms of payload, something that wasn't really visible. You didn't know you were infected. And it could be set up to, at some signal, format your entire hard drive. And so Joe is out there saying, if this clearly could be used to attack the power grid and other infrastructure. Now, most power stations are run on air-gapped computers for precisely that reason, but the remote transformers and switching centers are accessed over the regular internet. And they could be messed around, cause overloads, cause meltdowns. The NSA was supposed to be guarding our nation's IT security and safety, and instead, with all these wormholes they've bored through it, we are actually, in fact, wide open to a cyber attack right now. And it's all the fault of the NSA, the CIA, and by extension, the U.S. government itself. All right, let's get into the economic news here. Apparently, China's Grand Silk Road Summit is off to a rocky start. China is getting ready to invest a huge amount of money in building a new Silk Road for travel and cargo transportation from Asia to Europe in order to not have to put it on cargo ships and sail it around India and through the Suez Canal and so forth. They're going to have a high-speed rail transport system on there, and it is going to be wonderful if and when they get it working. India is already having second thoughts about participating, saying that it's going to lead to unsustainable debt for all the countries that are involved, that they may have to borrow so much money to make it work, it may never pencil out. I know that feeling. We're dealing with that with the light rail system here on Oahu. Apparently up in Toronto, Home Capital is having a lot of people start to pull their money out because apparently they've been using the bank deposits to fund mortgage lending, which would be okay, except that Canada appears to be in a real estate mortgage bubble very similar to what happened here in the United States in 2008. Okay, we're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with hour number 2 after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And one of our listeners just wrote on in with yet another suggestion for dealing with malware. And it's actually a good one. It does take a lot of work, and it's called a full image backup of your hard drive. And, of course, it requires having a backup drive of at least the same, if not more, capacity. And it literally makes a ghost of your system drive. So if the system drive gets hit with ransomware or something that cripples it, you can basically boot the backup software off a CD-ROM and copy the image back to the system drive, and everything will be fine. Of course, you have to do that on a regular basis, or you're going to lose a lot of work. If you can set it up to be automated, that really is the way to go. And that's actually what we do here. Is every day right after the radio show, system drive gets backed up to a separate outside drive. Alrighty, now then, getting on back to the economy. Rather interesting phenomenon. This is coming out of Investment Watch blog. Investors, meaning foreign investors, are starting to pull out of the U.S. for the first time in years. And they're starting to put their money into foreign stock markets, which are basically outperforming the U.S. Now, yes, we have our market rigging going on here, but everybody knows that's what's going on, and the actual underlying stocks are not performing very well. We've all seen the first quarter numbers coming on in, and they're abysmal. Now, do you remember all the way back under George Herbert Walker Bush, there was the S&L bailout? It was actually tied in with the CIA's Iran-Contra money laundering that was going on. And basically, it was done to send a message to foreign investors that it was safe to invest your money in the United States of America, and if you made money, you could take it, you could keep it. But if you lost money, as happened in the S&L meltdown, the American taxpayer would be made to cover all the losses. So the American investment market was being sold to foreign investors as a cannot-lose proposition, and it did trigger a lot of investment into this country. And again, following 2008, again, the same thing. Investors who were harmed by the mortgage-backed security meltdown were compensated, their money reimbursed at the expense of the taxpayer. Well, it's a powerful lure, but foreign investors are starting to get the idea that the U.S. government may not be able to do that much longer because of the degree the American people have been impoverished. We don't have the money to make good on bad Wall Street investments. And that may be another reason that foreign investors are pulling. Now, apparently, Josh Sigurdson, in an interview with John Sneeson, is talking about Wells Fargo Bank. And apparently, they're making some dramatic moves as if they're preparing for a major upset. And remember, last week we reported even J.P. Morgan Chase is saying it's going to happen this year. It's going to happen this year. And everybody is getting nervous. We all know it's been coming for a long, long time. It's very hard to say when it's going to happen because, as I keep pointing on out, the people in charge, they have the ability to change the rules. And they just keep changing the rules to keep things ticking along a little bit longer, in the hope that when it all finally comes apart, it'll be after they have left office or retired or moved on. And they've kicked that can down the road so much, it looks like an old bubblegum wrapper at this point. Very bizarre story. Apparently, the New York Fed has issued a statement saying that $500 trillion in derivatives remains an important asset class. In other words, the derivatives are considered and being treated as an asset, which only works if you could actually collect on them. That's not going to happen. A lot of magical thinking on Wall Street here right now. We're going to take a phone call here. James in Minnesota, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike.
Aloha.
I've been listening to you for about 2 years now. I'm in my early 20s. And I got to say, I'm very interested in every aspect you have, and you seem to be spot on. And I don't want to take you off on a jag here, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the economics and how the things are going on in the United States.
Okay.
So I know you've been talking about how hard things are out here in the United States, and I definitely agree with you. You know, I've been working full-time. I had lived in my car for several years. And I got to tell you, I really don't know how a lot of these people do it. Like, rent, you got to have 3 times, you know, the 3 times the amount you make. You have to have that in order to be able to rent things. And man, it's just so hard out here.
It is. It's hard everywhere. Like I said, Claire and I did sort of a mini staycation, and we went over to the windward side to visit some friends we hadn't seen in a while, and we hadn't been over there in a long time. And we were just looking at how everything was deteriorating. The roads are full of holes. We were driving along the street, and just empty retail space after empty retail space after empty retail space, and homeless people everywhere. It really is. We are past the worst of the Depression of the 1930s, only nobody wants to admit it. But it really is hard out here, and where it's all failing, the reason it's going to fail is the people on Wall Street and in the government are still convinced there's a lot of money out here somewhere among the American people. They just have to figure out a way to tax or scam it out of us, and all will be well. No, the well is dry. The well is absolutely dry. They're going to put their claws out and scrape on back, and all they're going to get are wood chips.
Yeah, totally in agreement. What do you think we need to do in order to try and change this? I mean, the government's so corrupt, and we all know it, but
we're going to have to let it crash. We're going to have to let it crash. You know, we got to stop thinking about, the government and the larger issues. It's time to pull on back and start thinking, how do I best take care of myself and my family and my neighbors and my friends? And that's it, because it is going to crash. That's why they're so desperate to get a major war going. They hope that the American people will be distracted by it, because that's what happened the last 2 times the private central bankers and the government got the economy this messed up. Crash of 1907, World War I. Crash of 1929, World War II. Crash of 2008. Look how many countries the U.S. has invaded, drone-struck, regime changed, and there's still more on the list, all the way up to and including Russia and China.
Yeah, totally, my man. I'm in total agreement with you. All right, well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. This is just the first time calling in, and it was a pretty cool experience. So I thank you for everything you do, and just keep up the good work, Mike.
Well, thank you, and good luck. I hope things improve for you. I want things to improve for all of the ordinary American citizens. But right now we have a government that seems totally focused on war, Israel, globalism, and they seem oblivious to the harm and suffering they're causing to we, the American people. It's angering in the extreme, and I understand that people are angry, and it's okay to be angry. Anger is a survival mechanism, so okay to go with that. All right, we're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Speaking of anger, Greece is considering a new constitutional referendum that would change their election system, and apparently this is in response to the people of Greece feeling like they were cheated by Tsipras, who campaigned on getting out of the EU and the ECB and dealing with Greece's unpayable, out-of-control debt. And not too surprising, his approval ratings are plummeting. And apparently people are saying that this attempt to change the Constitution is an attempt to hang on to power. The way we saw over in Turkey with their referendum. Everybody is moving toward dictatorship to protect the wealth and power of those who are already wealthy and powerful. And apparently Germany is still demanding that Greece push through what are called drastic reforms if they're going to get any more bailout payments. And by drastic reforms, it means cutting the pensions, just cutting off the old people, let them go on out and die. Cutting public services, cutting maintenance, and the selling of Greek national assets into private hands. This is the move. This is when the bankers take over the world. They're conquering the world with bits of paper with colored ink all over it. Apparently, over at the G7 meeting, people were leaving it after the summit, and reporters and observers were saying they didn't look too happy about what they heard inside here. Spain's sixth largest bank is saying they have liquidity until the end of the year. After that, they don't know what's going to happen. Here in the United States, up in Anchorage, Alaska, economic confidence is plummeted into what's called uncharted territory. And they're very pessimistic about the local economy, more so than they have been in years. Apparently, Alaska's in a major recession. It really is getting close. I don't know how they're going to hold it up, especially when every solution offered for our declining economy basically amounts to pouring in money at the top and hoping some of it will sinter down to the people. And it doesn't work that way. It didn't work in Reagan's day. It doesn't work today. Saving an economy is like moving a house. It has to be picked up by the foundation. And in the economy, that's the working and middle classes. If you try and move a house by grabbing it by the roof, which is what TARP and QE and bailout are, the structure will shatter. Can't be done. Right now we're seeing the worst restaurant tailspin since 2009-2010. Rising household debt precludes consumption, including eating out. That's really what's going on. That's what's locking up the economy. That's why people aren't going to the shopping malls and buying things. That's why there's so many empty retail spaces. In fact, little side story here. As you know, the Radio Shack near my home went out of business a while ago. And since I was over on the Windward side, they have a Radio Shack there in the Windward Mall. And I said, oh, good, I can pick up a couple of little jacks and some heat shrink tubing that I need. And I go on in there. They're having their going out of business sale. A lot of empty storefronts in that mall, and they're trying to keep their business going. They're actually having a farmer's market inside the shopping mall. All along the rails there, they've got all these tables from local farmers who are selling produce. Signs are everywhere. Now, over in Europe, the European Central Bank publishes their economic forecasts. The European Commission publishes their economic forecasts, and all of a sudden they're going in opposite directions. They're not in agreement, and that is making a lot of people very, very nervous. Somebody is either wrong or they're fibbing, trying to make things look better than they really are. Well, look at this country. They're still claiming a 5% unemployment rate in a nation where 90 million Americans have been unable to find work for weeks, if not months. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Brendan in San Francisco. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was listening to Mike Cernovich this morning, and he's claiming that, and keep in mind, he's been breaking a lot of stuff lately. He's claiming that Trump, when they decided to fire Comey, they intentionally withheld that information from Spicer and Priebus, and there was no leaks on that information. So he basically concluded that they've narrowed down their leaks to those two individuals, and that's what's behind their being shown the door. And just once again, Cernovich has been spot on with a lot of his inside info.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. Well, again, Trump's White House has had a problem with leaks. There's no question about that. It's good that he's getting them under control. The reality is, looking at Congress and all this partisan fighting, they're obviously paralyzed from actually doing anything like their job or governing. And as long as Trump is dealing with all these leakers and contrary agendas in his own White House, he can't be as effective as he needs to be. So he does need to lay down the law. Donald Trump needs a White House staff that's on the side of Donald Trump. in order to go on out and do what it is he wants to do. Again, I think it was Priebus who brought in all these neocon advisors to saddle Trump with, and I think Trump needs to really think about getting away from them. Trump needs to talk to some real military experts about the feasibility of continuing the war agenda, of whether we could actually win or if we're going to face a major, major loss.
Yeah, it looks like Trump's basically handed off the foreign policy or was forced to do that, and the carrot was he got to keep some of the domestic front in return, because his presidency seems quite fragmented in terms of the policies of what's going to make America great again. It's a pretty simple formula, and it's a proven formula, and he's kind of all over the place with a lot of these things. My first red flag was keeping a lot of these Obama sycophants in his administration. That was my first big red flag.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't do something about this election process that you mentioned, the CIA trying to get their dirty hands on our elections, he's done, and we're done. And if we're going to keep America great again, we need to get back to some paper ballots and, local elections. I haven't heard a peep about that.
Yeah, it is amazing. And even though Trump created this Vaccine Safety Commission with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. On top of it, we're not hearing about that either. Now, that is probably more the corporate media trying to protect their vaccine advertisers. And as far as the election fraud issue, the TV networks and the major newspapers are dirty in this whole thing. They're all part of that Voters News Service. And they absolutely do not want an investigation into what's going on because they're part of the problem. In fact, there was another article one of the members posted at whatreallyhappened.com in which a big issue with what's wrong with this country today is we have a corporate media that actually sees themselves as more important than the government itself and above the law on top of everything else. Way too many people with God complexes running around this nation.
Yeah. I think the only power that we have is the power of our pockets and where we spend our money. Just to boil it down, I mean, I personally don't buy prescription medicines. Even the only thing I'll ever take is like for a headache maybe, and but really I don't follow any of this hay fever stuff or, I mean, I don't trust anything now, and I'm trying to eat better. I'm going to the farmers markets that, fortunately, we're kind of in a nice area where there's a lot of produce and vegetables being grown that are organic. But, I mean, the fast food's poison, and I've been guilty of eating it, the soda pops, all of the stuff that we're putting in our bodies, it's just one more thing that they've got control over us. And we know they're putting horrible things in our food. So where we spend our money, and it sounds silly to say it as I'm saying it, but if we stop buying this plastic crap from China and go down to the Goodwill store, I mean, I love finding a nice shirt on the rack for $3 that I can wear out and look like $1 million, and I got it from the Salvation Army. I'm not ashamed of that, and I make over $100,000 a year as the elevator guy. I mean, I'm tired of all this plastic garbage that they're shoving down our throats, lead toys for our children, tainted dog food. Yep. I mean, we're under attack from every possible angle.
Yeah, we're being plundered and pillaged. And again, one of the coffee mugs we sell at the online store is the last act of any government is to loot the nation, and we seem to be in that phase right now. And you're right about Goodwill, and Claire and I will go to the Goodwill or Salvation Army, and we'll buy things there. Because it's not only less expensive, it's actually helping these organizations do some good out there. So, yeah, I'm not ashamed to say I shop at these places.
Hey, Mike, that reminds me like how the whole fashion thing goes. They plan a year in advance of what colors are trendy and things. Mm-hmm. It's another form of programming and to get it into our pockets. Yeah. I actually turned the TV volume down on the
Can I put you on hold? Can I put you on hold?
So that's one way.
Can I put you on hold?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. We're talking with Brendan in San Francisco. And, Brendan, you are about to start a new topic.
Mike, did you get a chance to see that video I sent about the aquaponics store there on Oahu in your backyard? Did you watch that?
No, actually, I'm not even sure I spotted it. I'll go back and look for it. But yeah, there's a lot of aquaponics and that kind of stuff going on here in the islands. What's really amazing is that the ancient Hawaiians were really expert at farming and harvesting from the sea. And if you look at all of the islands in Google Earth, you will see the remains of these fish ponds that were very cleverly set up. They're these stone rings that reach into the ocean. Some of them are quite large. And at the far end, there are these wooden grates that are where the spacing of the slats allows small fish to swim on in, and they swim and they eat and they grow, and they grow to a point where they can't get back out. And over time, you'll build up this huge population of fish in these fish ponds that are just there to be grabbed and thrown on the fire for dinner. And so there are these stone terraces that are up against the mountains that would actually catch the rainwater running off, because when you're on lava, the water tends to run off very quickly. And the ancient Hawaiians built these terraces filled with soil that would trap the water, and they would plant there. And a lot of people don't know about this stuff. And a couple of years ago, I wanted to try and sell an idea for a TV show called The Hawaii Less Traveled or The America Less Traveled, looking at these things that the tourists normally are not shown because you can't really sell a ticket for it. Because when Claire and I lived on the windward side in Kaonohi, we discovered these stone terraces just a quarter mile from where we lived, hidden in the jungle. And it had been a park at one point because we saw the rusted signs, but it had just been allowed to corrode and go away and grow over. And we went on in, and just all these stone terraces going up the side of the hill, and it's amazing. And I wish people knew more and more about that. So there is that tradition of really living and working with the sea around here.
Right. I have the pleasure of living on the Big Island and on Oahu, and one of the things that shocked me was I was working on a guy's house putting in a dumbwaiter, and I looked on the ground and there was an avocado as big as a football that had just fallen off the tree and crashed to the ground and split open, and I couldn't believe it was an avocado that big, and I just wanted to reach into it and scoop out a handful and eat it. But on the aquaponics thing, I want to encourage the listeners to go and look and research, because it's a closed-loop system where you grow food using the nutrients from the waste of the fish, and they're using the tilapia fish. And so if you like to eat fish, you've got your fish, and then the nutrients goes to the plant, whatever you choose to grow, and you can expand it over time. So for a small investment, you've got your fish that are feeding your plants in a circle, and the water doesn't really evaporate over time. It's a pretty self-sufficient thing, and for a small investment, you've got fish and you've got veggies, and it's expandable. And I've been doing a lot of research, and that's where my next step is going to be personally, is to try to get that type of system going, because I've got a cabin up in the hills, and I want to be a little more self-sufficient.
What do you feed the fish?
So what happens is there is a fish food product.
Okay, so so it isn't a closed system. You do have to put something in from the outside. I'll tell you what, we're coming up on another commercial break, so I'm going to let you go here, but I will go back and look at that. But again, there are efficient ways of farming naturally, organically. Going back and looking in history, it can be done. We don't really need these big, giant corporate chemical-laden farms. They're just trying to sell you that idea, because if they can get you dependent on their products and unable to grow your own food, then that's just more money for them. That's what it is. It's enforced dependency on the corporations, and enforced dependency is just another form of slavery. So thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go right here, and I'm checking my email. When we get on back, apparently they're talking about a new Marshall Plan for Africa. It's like the dawn of a new age of colonialism. We'll be right back after these commercials. And Aloha America. We're going to take one more phone call here. Carolyn in Maryland. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, hi there. Well, you ought to give a disclaimer when your show begins that the listeners might not be able to handle it while they're driving, but anyway.
Well, yeah.
Okay. My question for you is, and this concerns, the phones that you just have to touch the screen to operate. And it concerns, I guess, the lottery machines that you just have to touch the screen, the ATMs, really anything that you just have to touch the screen on to operate. And some voting machines are like that, too. Be honest with me. Are fingerprints collected when that happens?
No, but you could pick up a couple of nasty viruses or germs, which is, I think, the reason they sell all those little portable hand sanitizers and everything.
Okay, so really it's not used as because there's probably a built-in camera there too, so it's really not used for fingerprint collection?
Well, unless it's supposed to be looking at your fingerprint like the fingerprint lock on the iPhone, obviously that has images of your fingerprint.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Now, you've probably noticed this very bizarre situation where all these terrorist groups keep changing their names. We went through ISIS, ISIL, ILS, and it turns out there is a reason for it, and it has to do with rebranding. And Claire just pointed me at this story. It's originally from Moon over Alabama. I linked to the version that's on Blacklisted News. And apparently the United States now has a new definition of terrorism. This is coming from Max Abrams. And the new definition of terrorism, non-state actors who use violence against civilians for a political goal and haven't been supported by the U.S. That last part is the new part. In other words, if they're non-state actors using violence against civilians for a political goal and they're being supported by the U.S., well, then obviously they're not terrorist groups. So the gist of this whole article is that some of these groups like Al-Qaeda are changing their name, and the State Department is saying, well, they're no longer on the list of terrorist groups, therefore we can give them supplies. It's a bit of a double shuffle. These are the same people. They're carrying out the same actions. But what they're trying to get away from is Americans who are asking, we've been told ISIS and Al-Qaeda are our enemies, why are you giving them all these guns and missiles and the rest of it? And so now they're saying, well, this isn't ISIS and Al-Qaeda anymore. It's the, let me look at this, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is the new name for Al-Qaeda. And they're not on any U.S. or Canadian terrorist list, therefore Canada and the United States government will give them bombs and bullets to act as non-state actors committing violence on behalf of the United States. I mean, propaganda is just getting into la-la land here. Down in Venezuela, things are getting very, very intense there. Apparently, Venezuela's government is literally blocking Caracas' main access road, trying to keep the angry people from coming on in and tearing down that government. And unfortunately, it looks like Venezuela has fallen victim to another color revolution. We know the U.S. government has been carrying out economic war against Venezuela going all the way back to Hugo Chavez, who dared sell the oil for currencies other than the dollar, sold it to China for the yuan, and who then spent that money on the Venezuelan people. And boy, we can't have somebody doing that. It sets a bad example for all the people in all these other countries. Now let's get into immigration here, and this shows you just how tyrannical the world in general is becoming. And you're not going to believe this, but this is really happening. Over in Hamburg, Germany, authorities have started confiscating residential units in the Hamm district. And what they're doing is they're grabbing these things and they're renting them to tenants chosen by the city, meaning the refugees. And the owners have no say about it whatsoever. And government inspectors are looking at these residential units, And they're saying if there are any repairs or renovations that the government deems are necessary, the owners of the property will be forced to pay for it. And they're considering similar expropriation measures in Berlin, or they did. Up there it was deemed unconstitutional. And Germans are now asking, is the government going to now limit the maximum amount of living space you can have? Are they going to force people with larger apartments to share them with the refugees? There's a housing shortage. And the housing shortage is caused by the open border policy. And the refugees did not bring the wealth with them to build homes for themselves. So now the government is saying, well, we're just going to take housing, building away from other people. If I were in Germany right now, I'd be seriously considering a revolt. And that's where they're all pushing us. This push for a one-world government is creating a political climate leading to a global revolution. And what's really amazing here is this housing shortage. Apparently, Germany has a record 54 billion euro budget surplus. But they're not going to spend any on housing for the refugees. They're just going to take housing away from the German people. And on top of that, despite this record 54 billion euro surplus, Angela Merkel is rejecting tax cuts. Now, over in Brussels, Jean-Claude Juncker is out there saying plans for a grand army of the Republic of Europe will happen. There's going to be an EU army, and they're already talking about this army giving Brussels a unique position to provide worldwide security. In other words, the new Europe, all merged together, which was also the plan of the Nazis, by the way, is now going to power project. They're going to go on out and meddle with the rest of the world. Now, because of things like this, the rise of the EU army, the decline of the United States, over at Blacklisted News, they have an article saying major developments strongly suggest the end of the unipolar world order. Now, when the Soviet Union collapsed, everybody started talking about it was a unipolar world centered on the United States of America, the last great superpower, based on its nuclear arsenal and not a whole heck of a lot of anything else. And with Moon Jae-in's victory in South Korea, the U.S. is going to be very hard-pressed to justify attacking North Korea just on its own. South Korea's security was the big talking point. We have to attack North Korea to protect South Korea. South Korea are the good guys. We were on their side. We may actually see a resumption of talks between North Korea, China, South Korea, even Japan. Calm that whole part of the world down, which is not what the United States wants. If all these other countries around the world start taking steps to remove from the United States any excuse for invasion, it's all going to start falling apart. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to be invaded. Saddam gave up his weapons of mass destruction. The U.S. still invaded. Assad gave up his chemical weapons. The U.S. is still trying to find a way to invade. We know who the aggressor is in this new world war. It's not a pleasant thought to realize that we're the bad guys, but we're the bad guys. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin is calling for cultural self-preservation of Europe from what he describes as the impure globalist agenda. Putin understands that part of the globalists' goal is to destroy our sense of identity, our sense of our own culture, our own history, where we come from, who we've been, where we are. And he says you should protect that. It is part of your identity. It's part of your heritage. You shouldn't just throw it away, to be politically correct here. Meanwhile, Hungary continues to defy Brussels in terms of enforcing its own border. which Brussels is saying you will pay for it by putting up a border. And Hungary has unveiled their new electrified border wall. It comes with watchtowers and guards with machine guns. So support for this refugee flood is definitely falling apart here. Interesting little story, apparently out in Los Angeles County. The liberals are moaning and wringing their hands over the fact that fears of deportation under the new immigration policies of Donald Trump are causing some immigrants to not apply for the EBT program. Well, they're not supposed to be on the EBT program if they're not legal citizens. But to the open borders immigration people, that shouldn't matter. Just come across the border, we'll give you free stuff. It's the free stuff that has exacerbated the illegal immigrant problem. Because the popular view south of the border is that if you can get across that border, the U.S. will welcome you in, they'll give you all kinds of free stuff. And especially looking at the conditions in Mexico from their prolonged war between the drug cartels and the government, and the economic declines in Central America, that's a very attractive thing. Go to the U.S. They're incredibly rich. They'll give you all kinds of free stuff. No, we aren't incredibly rich anymore. We have a few very rich people. The majority of Americans are like that gentleman who called in earlier in the show, living in their cars. Tucker Carlson is out there saying that Mexico is now complaining about the illegal immigrants crossing Mexico from Central America to get to the United States. Apparently they're having their rape crisis down there, and apparently some of these Central Americans are not shy about relieving themselves in the middle of the street. Don't even take the time to try and find a restroom. Just drop the trouser, leave a little brown pile, and go on. Story coming out of the Express in Great Britain, to nobody's surprise. A new report by Newswatch confirms the BBC was strongly biased against Brexit in the run-up to the referendum. And Newswatch went back and looked at Radio 4, their flagship morning news program. Said, in effect, they were actively campaigning against the Brexit. Now, the BBC is supported by the British people. They're not supposed to have a political bias. But they did. And they still do. And the EU is still trying to find a way to derail this, but they're fighting a losing battle. As of the last poll, basically a year after the vote on Brexit, support for Remain has plunged to just 22%. If they were to have a new referendum today, Brexit would win by an even wider margin, which is why they stopped talking about a new Brexit referendum. Okay, out in California, and I swear there must be something in the water. Not too long ago, there was a bill. It was part of this whole gun-free zone idea. And the act was Senate Bill 707, which barred firearms on school grounds, but made exceptions for anyone granted permission by the local superintendents. In other words, if you're a teacher and you're in a school and you're in a violent area and you have a concealed weapon permit, your superintendent could allow you to carry that gun in the classroom so that if anybody shot at you, you could shoot back. And apparently not too many superintendents did that. In fact, hardly any. But despite that, California Assemblyman Kevin McCarty is pushing a new bill that would take away school administrators' power to allow teachers to be armed in classrooms for self-defense. They want to turn those classrooms into a shooting gallery. PC is getting just really weird out there. Big stink over in London, and this is being reported by the BBC. Apparently Highgate School is going along with this idea that gender is fluid. And apparently the kids are falling for the propaganda, and they're starting to say, I'm questioning my gender. Well, you know, take a look down the trousers. I'm questioning my gender. And so now the school is saying that boys may choose to wear skirts. And everybody's in an uproar. I have a solution. Call them kilts. But again, this idea of gender fluidity, and Bill, the not really science guy, is out there pushing it on his program. It's another way of destroying your sense of identity, your sense of who you are, your sense of self, to make it easier to control you. It's brainwashing. They're literally brainwashing our kids to not know who they are, not know what restroom they're supposed to go into. It is insane. Now, we have been talking about the high degree of drug corruption within our government, many other governments on earth, and it appears it may be a problem down in Australia as well. Story coming out of the Daily Telegraph's Australian Bureau, noting that major drug dealers, we're not talking about the guy on the street with a few little bags, we're talking the major drug dealers caught with millions of dollars of drugs, they're getting very, very soft jail sentences. Maybe 4.5 years in time, even though the crimes they've committed carry penalties of life in prison. But they're letting the major dealers out. Coming down hard on the end users, but the major dealers, somehow, they seem to get on. All right, well, we're coming up here on another commercial break. When we come on back, we're going to be talking more about computers heading into our third hour. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443 if you want to call on in and share some opinions. And we will be back after these words from our advertisers. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I'm looking at a story from Reason.com. Basically saying the reason that we're all dealing with all this cybercrime is the government does have its priorities backwards. It spends 9 times as much money figuring out how to break into your computers than it does on how to protect them. Something to keep in mind. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Ramsey in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes, sir. I just have a question. See, this whole illegal immigration issue, when did that start exactly, and what book do you recommend on this issue?
Well, I cannot recommend a book. I mean, there's always been an illegal immigration problem for any nation trying to secure its borders, but it really was allowed to get out of control, leading into this whole New World Order situation. And the shoving of refugees all over the planet. But Eisenhower was actually able to shut down the border between the U.S. and Mexico. He called it Operation Wetback, of course, which would be denounced by the PC people today. And he did it with only 1/10 the immigration enforcement officers that we have here today. So it is possible to do it. And it's possible to do it. Again, cut off the financial incentive to come here. But unfortunately, for various political agendas, they want illegal immigrants coming here. A lot of people, a lot of businesses like to have people who are willing to work for very low money under the table. You go over to any home renovation center and in the morning, and you'll see a bunch of people standing out there just looking for some work. Some guy in the truck drives up and says, "Can you help me put in a bathtub?" And the guy goes, "See," and they're off and running, and that's a big part of the problem.
Okay, so Cesar, like Cesar, like my question is like when do you think Cesar, like during your time, like when did you start realizing this immigration problem coming in from Mexico, like in the 1970s, early 80s, or before and after?
Well, like I said, it's been a problem all along, and I was really aware of it back in, would have been, the mid-1970s. because there was a big strain on California's welfare budget from the illegals who were coming on in and immediately signing up for welfare and then cranking out babies as fast as they could because each new baby meant more money every month. And it was an out-of-control situation then, but it's a lot worse today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we're coming up here on our station identification. We'll be coming back with hour number 3, and the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, if you want to call on in. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And the Washington Compost is out with a story saying that Trump revealed highly classified information to the Russian foreign minister and ambassador in a White House meeting last week. And apparently saying jeopardized a critical source of intelligence on the Islamic State. Well, if I recall the rules, presidents can declassify information if they need. But again, this is a desperate attempt to put the leaking of classified information back onto Donald Trump and take it away from Hillary Clinton. And they're basically saying that the information was provided by a partner and Trump shouldn't have done this. They're still after him. I mean, how long has it been since the election and they still cannot get over the fact that their lady lost? Alrighty, let's see. Into the world of computers and away from WannaCry, because it's hardly the only problem we are dealing with. Apparently, there's a new surfacing of an old problem, and that is that criminals are using foreign alphabets, especially Cyrillic, which has a lot of letters that look at quick glance like the letters we use here in English. And they will register domain names with these Cyrillic characters and then send on out emails that have a URL that at first glance looks like a legit URL, like whatsapp.com. And you click on it and you're taken to the fake website that looks like the real website, and they launch malware attacks. So there fortunately is a plugin for the Chrome browser, and hopefully it will be available for other browsers, called IDN Safe, which will block internationalized domain names, meaning those carrying embedded characters that are not English. But again, this article at Reason has hit the nail on the head. The government's priority is not the security of your computer systems. Yes, Donald Trump has signed an executive order to secure the government's computer systems, but not yours. You're being left wide open, and the government has spent 9 times more money figuring out how to get into your computer systems than it has spent trying to protect them from bad people getting into your computer system. And that tells you where the priority is. Forget what the government says it wants to do. Look at what it does. Look at where it spends its money. Actually, your money. That tells you what that government's priorities are. And number 1, obviously, is war, conquest, and death. Now, there's apparently the Neckers botnet has been harnessed to fling out a new strain of yet another ransomware dubbed JAF. And JAF spreads in a way similar to Locky and even uses the same payment site template, but it's apparently a different creation. And apparently it's sent by way of an email that has a PDF file attached to it containing an embedded docm file with a malicious macro script. And that script will then download and execute the JAF ransomware. Now, there are a lot of file formats out there that we really ought to stop using. Flash is a security nightmare. In fact, one time early on when we were just starting up the website and we were just starting to take advertisers, because for the first 12 years I ran my website, I paid for it out of my own pocket. I can't do that anymore. And we got an advertiser who insisted on us putting a Flash animation on the site, and we detected it was a problem and planting malware. And so At least as far as the our websites are concerned, Flash is banned because it is a security nightmare. Something that you should do if you have not already done. Two things you should do. If you have Microsoft Office, disable all macros. And be very leery of any email that arrives with a spreadsheet or anything else that says you must enable macros to use this. It's a dead giveaway. And I don't know if you can disable the macros in the PDF reader. I'm certainly going to find out when the show is over. But we need to stop using these things that are vulnerable. What's wrong with ASCII text? I mean, Flash was created originally in the days of dial-up modems, trying to get sophisticated graphics over a low bandwidth connection. We don't need that anymore. We've got high bandwidth connections. And Flash is cool. I actually used Flash for a lot of the screen animations on Lost and Off the Map, but I won't have it on my website. So I'll look into that PDF disable macros. But you've got to be very, very careful about what comes on in. Because, again, Trump's executive order underscores it. Yeah, they're going to spend a lot of your money to protect the U.S. government's computer systems. Good luck getting it all onto the cloud, by the way. But you're on your own. That's okay. You're going to go out and buy security software, and that's good for the economy if you are forced to buy computer security software. All right, we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Apparently, oh, and the other thing you ought to do, if you have a Wi-Fi router in your home, change the default password. This is something a lot of people make the mistake. They'll get a router on in, and they figure they're fine. But the default passwords for all the routers, you can find them online. And so somebody, if they can get that password and you haven't changed it, and you haven't taken other security measures, they can log into your router. And from there, they can get into your machines. One good thing you might want to do, in addition to whatever WEP or WPA encryption that you're using, most routers have what is called MAC filtering, in which you get the MAC address of every device that's going to be used on the Wi-Fi router, and you put them in this list, and then you turn on MAC filtering. And any device trying to access your Wi-Fi that doesn't have a MAC address on the list is automatically blocked. And that is a very, very powerful security tool. A lot more work, but worth it, definitely. Now, apparently there is a bug in what's called the UPnP, the Universal Plug-and-Play, that allows it to be crashed and bypassed by an attacker. And it can be used as a denial-of-service vector. And again, never download a patch, software update, or a driver from any but the original issuing website. There's all kinds of websites all over that says you can we'll automatically scan your computer and update all your drivers for you. And that's used to plant malware. It's wide open. It's wide open. Nobody in the government is trying to hunt these people down unless they make the mistake of attacking a major corporation or the government, then they'll hunt them down. But for the scammers who are making millions of dollars off of unsuspecting computer users, ordinary people, not worth their problem. Not worth their problem. Now, over in Great Britain, Theresa May is saying that if she and the Conservative Party retain control of the government in next month's elections, they're going to beef up online protection for British citizens, threatening fines against social media companies who fail to safeguard their users against things like hate speech, pornography, or other sources of harm. I hate it when they have these very fuzzy descriptions. I mean, we all understand what pornography is. But there is no real definition for hate speech. It's an ad hoc phrase. Oh, I object to that. It's hate speech. Well, anytime you're telling the truth about somebody that doesn't want the truth told, they come on back and say, oh, that's hate speech. It's anti-Semitism. It's anti-Germanism. You're being anti-French. So they're looking to start cracking down on free speech over there in Great Britain. Apparently all the world's tyrants are starting to realize they can't continue to be tyrants in a world with a free and open internet and an independent media. They want to take the world back to the way it was in the 1950s, where the ruler shall proclaim and the corporate media shall regurgitate onto the general population. And the general population, unable to find any alternative information, will just believe it. That's what they want. They're literally taking us back to the 1950s. One-way propaganda, new Cold War with the Ruskies. Oh, those were the good old days. Now, as I said, yesterday was Mother's Day. And, of course, my mother's not around anymore, but I do have an aunt who lives in New Hampshire. And she's my surrogate mother, so she gets the flowers and the phone call. Apparently in New Hampshire, in some parts of the states, Mother's Day, they had 6 inches of snow. We're talking May 14th, and they had 6 inches of snow. Now, one of the big scary monsters the global warming people have been talking about for a long time is the so-called methane bomb. And the idea is people were looking at the projected numbers for global warming based on carbon dioxide, and they're saying, you're talking, 2 degrees over 100 years. Why should I get excited about that? And so they came up with this monster saying, well, when the temperature gets just a tiny fraction warmer than it is now, all of the methane trapped in the ocean floor as methane hydrate will start to bubble up to the surface, and there'll be a methane bomb, and all this methane will just froth up into the atmosphere at the same time, and it will cause incredible amounts of warming. And then it'll be run away, and it'll be too late to stop it unless you give us carbon taxes now. But apparently there was a study done showing that as the methane bubbles through the water, it's actually acting as a coolant. And they're basically saying that a release of methane from the seabed creates a cooling effect 230 times greater than the warming caused by the methane itself. So that little monster has now been discredited. Gloria Steinem, of course, knows what's causing global warming, a lack of abortions. Gloria Steinem told Refinery 29 last Tuesday that global warming is directly correlated to a lack of the free availability of abortion because all those babies are breathing carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is... It's like I've told you before about politicians. No matter what is going on, their first thought is, how can I twist this to support my agenda? And some of it does get pretty ridiculous. First and foremost, you need to understand carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It is a major part of the cycle of life here on Earth, because if there's no carbon dioxide, the plants will all die. And if the plants will all die, then all the animals will die. The fact is that atmospheric carbon dioxide is not a problem. If it goes up, plants grow faster and larger and absorb more carbon dioxide, turn it into oxygen, which is good, and food, which is good. Commercial greenhouses artificially increase the carbon dioxide inside to get larger crops faster, more saleable product. And the gardeners who are working inside those greenhouses, they're not falling over dead. They're not broiling. It's just all hoax and scam. They want you to believe. They don't want you to think. They want you to believe. They want you to stop using plastic bags, which actually I'm in favor of because the plastic bags, I actually like the paper bags better here. But you know who the largest polluter in the whole world is? It's the U.S. military. Story out of Blacklisted News. And basically, this was triggered off by the news that last week, the U.S. Naval Station in Virginia Beach spilled 94,000 gallons of jet fuel into a nearby waterway less than a mile from the Atlantic Ocean. And it's certainly not as catastrophic as the Gulf oil disaster, but it underscores the fact that these things happen on military bases on a regular basis. And these military bases are working with dangerous toxic chemicals, and they produce more hazardous waste than the 5 largest U.S. chemical companies combined. But clean environment, it's only important when the politician can get votes or money for it. All right, we're going to start taking some phone calls. James in Charlotte, North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just went to that article you mentioned a little while ago on the Washington Post about Trump supposedly leaking sensitive intelligence to the Russian ambassador, and it's nothing. It's just a great big nothing. I mean, they don't specify specifically what intelligence it is. McMaster has denied that any sensitive intelligence was leaked.
Yep.
So it's just another one of these attacks. I'm wondering if you had talked about this thing that supposedly a number of people in the media got all puffy and huffy about when the Russian ambassador met with Trump, and they brought their own photographer in with them, and horror of horrors, they actually got photographs of the Oval Office, which anyone can find online. You can find hundreds of photographs of the Oval Office online, but they thought that this was just the greatest breach of security that had happened in decades.
Yeah, the Oval Office is a meeting room. Most people don't realize it. The president actually has another office where he does his real work, where all the paperwork and the documents, and it's off the Oval Office. But the Oval Office is ceremonial. It's for meetings, and there's nothing there. And as you point out, you can go to Google image search and get all kinds of pictures of the Oval Office, and it's no big deal. But yeah, they're still trying to push this idea that Trump is a Russian asset as a desperate distraction away from what's going on with Hillary Clinton. With word that Trey Gowdy could actually be the new head of the FBI, Hillary and her people, they're in panic mode because all of a sudden they're not going to be able to hold off any more investigations.
Yeah, that's. I'm telling you, I think this thing that is trying to link Trump to Russia has truly reached the level of a major mass psychosis. I don't know how else you describe it.
Well, it's not a mass psychosis. It's just that's the talking point coming out of Hillary and Podesta and the DNC and the Never Trumpers. It's all they've got. It's the last card they've got to play. And so they're going to keep on pounding it. And as I said earlier, the head of the NSA is still using it to try and actually take control of America's election system, which would be the end of democracy in this nation. We will get the presidents that the intelligence agencies decide we ought to have. And I don't think the Founding Fathers ever considered this nation as being a spookocracy.
Yeah. Well, that's basically what I wanted to let you in on. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks an awful lot. And we're going to let you go. And we're going to very quickly take a phone call from Bob in Michigan. I'm sorry, Mississippi. Let me look my little chart here. I get it. Michigan. Bob in Michigan, what's on your mind?
Well, I got a newsletter. Do you know who Pete Hendrickson is?
I've heard the name.
Okay, he's supposed to be an IRS aficionado, all right? You know, and one of these guys that likes to challenge the IRS. Anyway, I'm on his newsletter information, and I just got an email from him that says, and I'll read just the opening paragraph, which just a couple statements. The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals has issued a stunning ruling admitting that the United States and federal courts have been systematically misapplying the income tax as a non-apportioned direct tax for decades. The clear implication is that literally trillions of dollars have been improperly taken from their rightful owners.
Okay,
and it goes on from there.
I got that newsletter. Sorry to cut you off, but we're almost to the commercial break. I went and I found that actual court ruling, and I'm not sure that it says what this guy thinks it says. we'd all love to have something that we could grab onto like that. I don't think that is it. Anyway, listen, Bob, got to let you go. We're going to be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phone. Sherry in Fredericksburg, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thanks, Mike. You said there was some guy that had some Trump connection that he was going to tell us what it is after Trump's out of office. This sounds kind of feeble to me. Where when Trump maybe can't, defend himself.
That's exactly right. Basically,
it's still feeble.
Okay, it is a rumor. There's no confirmation, but it is being spread all over the place that there is a sealed indictment against Donald Trump having to do with his connections to Russia, and it's a smear job. First of all, we don't know what's in the indictment, and an indictment does not automatically mean guilt. An indictment means there's a charge, and after his day in court, he could be proven completely innocent of any wrongdoing. It could be a completely bogus charge. All it takes is somebody to sign off and say, yes, we're going to issue an indictment here. Because Trump is president, the indictment would not be unsealed until after he's out of office. But this gives fuel to those pushing this Russia connection story by saying, well, supposedly there's an indictment out there. There's an indictment for his connections to Russia. And it's just pure propaganda, bovine excrement.
Right, and here's the indictment. Here's the charge, I bet you. And Trump won't be around to defend himself. I mean, he'll be out of office because he's getting out to save his life or whatever. But this is the important thing. I think Trump admires Putin. I think they have stuff in common. They're both breaking new ground, although Putin has a way head start and the support of the people, and he is more the government, and they're kind of all settled in. But there's some kind of simpatico connection here, I think, personally, very compatible. They're willing to work things out, and they would be easy to get along. It would be easy for them to get along with each other.
I think so, too.
They're sort of similar.
And Trump's hardly alone in respecting Vladimir Putin. A lot of people see him as the only real statesman on planet Earth right now. He seems to be the only adult in this playpen or this kindergarten of global geopolitics. And he's worked very hard over the years to try and calm things down in Syria. He's trying to calm things down in North Korea now. And a lot of people have a lot of respect for him, including me. As far as Donald Trump campaigned on restoring relations with Russia, and I think he would really like to do it, but he's surrounded by all these people like Rex Tillerson who's saying it's impossible to reset relations, let's just go on to war and have done with it.
Yeah, and I think our country, if we do bomb Russia, the first thing to go will be their wonderful fields of non-GMO crops that we may rely on completely, and we're just waiting to receive these if ours are all going to be wiped out, and Trump would not approve of our attacking Russia. I don't know how much clout. How much clout does he have to keep us from attacking Russia? I don't want to lose.
In theory, it's up to him, okay, as the commander-in-chief. Certainly in the use of nuclear weapons, it's supposed to go right to him and him alone. Unfortunately, the Pentagon seems to have gone rogue and is conducting its own foreign military policy without him. And certainly Rex Tillerson seems to feel that he, rather than Donald Trump, should be setting the war policy.
Right. Well, if they touch those fields, I'm going to be rooting for Russia. I'm sorry. That we need more non-GMO stuff in this country.
I'm still rooting for avoiding the war. I mean that's been a major reason of what Claire and I have done for the last 23 years is to head off this rush to a new world war. And right now I'm dealing with this incredible sense of failure over the fact that it seems to be on, and there's nothing that we ordinary people can do to stop it. And the only thing that is going to save us from a new world war is if the economy and the federal government come crashing down the way the Soviet Union did. And right now that seems to be our best hope and option for the future.
Yeah. Well, I have a little shout out for Fargo. Fargo has a wonderful, reportedly has a wonderful food pantry through their senior center. And people are going there. You can get as much as you can go through the line as many times as you want. They're getting food for themselves, but also for people they know. So this is working out really well through the senior center. Okay.
All right. Well,
thank you, Mike.
All right. We're going to let you go and take another break for commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take another phone call here. Richard in Washington State. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Mike, there's something that you seem to have a blind spot on that I thought I'd bring to your attention. I'm a avid listener, as time and circumstance permit. And what it is I have a little article here that I'll read. Chief Architect of the Patriot Act to quit. The Justice Department is losing another key foot soldier in its war on terrorism. Viet Dinh, Chief Architect of the U.S. Patriot Act, a controversial post-September 11th legislation that greatly expanded law enforcement agencies' power to track terrorists, submit his registration to the White House on Tuesday, an administration official said. Now, this is from May of 14th of 2003.
Okay.
Dinh, 35, plans to return to teaching at Georgetown University, Jesuit Law School. His resignation, which officials are expect to formally announce today, is effective May 31st. His departure comes as Michael Chertoff.
Richard, can we sum up here? And first of all, we shouldn't be reading somebody else's entire copyrighted work on the air here. But what's the point you're trying to make? What's the point you're trying to make?
Oh, okay. What it is the Knights of Malta. Wild Bill Donovan was in the OSS.
Yes.
He was a member of the Knights of Malta.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned here about a month ago, I didn't have a chance to get in, that Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy went to Malta for vacation after he passed off on some legislation.
No, that was Roberts who went after he did his reversal on Obamacare. And here's the situation. The U.S. government and all these various power players would love for us to spend time looking for the bad guys in far-off locations, over at the Bilderbergers or the what's that grotto up in California, that whole situation. But the problem is really right in front of us with the individuals. And so I tend not to go on with this idea that the Masons are doing this or the Knights of Malta are doing this, and instead focus on the individual miscreants themselves. So thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go here. But yeah, the more nervous government gets about you catching on to what they're doing, the more they're going to try and convince you that the real source of the problem is some unreachably far-off villainous organization that you could never possibly find and waste a lot of time looking for. No, the problems are right here. The problems are right here in those private central banks, in the state houses, in the Congress. That's where the problems are coming from. You don't need to look any further than that. And it is a common propaganda tactic called laying a false trail to lure you off into looking at some wasted effort rather than focusing on what's really going on. Now, over in India, there is a lawyer, and his name is Prashant Bhushan, and he is waging a one-lawyer campaign against the Indian government to stop the commercialization of GM mustard in that country. And apparently it's still working its way on up to the Supreme Court on a lawsuit seeking a moratorium on its commercial release. Now, you have to remember, India, a few years ago, went through this horrible tragedy when the government mandated BT GMO cotton to India's cotton farmers. And it turned out the BT cotton was less resilient to environmental variations than natural cotton, and the crops all failed. And the farmers were losing their farms, and there was this huge epidemic of suicides as a result. As these farmers who'd lived their entire lives on the farms, in many cases they were multi-generational farms, and all of a sudden the government said, you will use this cotton, it'll be wonderful. The crops failed, they lost the farms, and they killed themselves. And so they're very understandably leery about India's government once again saying, you will use these GM crops. Because the people of India understand, like the people of the United States, that our politicians are being bought by the GMO companies to force us to buy things we really don't want and do not need in order to keep the failing economy ticking along a little bit longer. A big part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership was to arm twist foreign governments into buying American products they really didn't want, such as GMO agriculture. We used to be a nation that made products and grew agricultural produce that other nations wanted to have, and they were willing to buy them. And now we make bloated, overpriced junk and GMO crops. Nobody wants to buy them. Do we fix the manufacturing? Do we go back to organic farming? No, we go on out and we use politics to force these people to buy the products we want to sell them. I had a little bit of an eye-opening shock the other day. I was watching a little bit of TV, and there was this commercial came on for an online site where you can get eyeglasses. And there was a line in there saying, these are made in Japan, so you know they're top quality. And it was a bit of a shock because when I was a kid, made in Japan meant the cheap stuff, the flimsy stuff. And that was the reputation of Japanese manufacturing back in the 1950s. But now it's reversed. Japan and China are manufacturing powerhouses. They make great stuff. They make stuff we can't make in this country anymore. And that really, I think, is a solid measure of the decline of the United States of America. Even our much vaunted weapons, the best of American manufacturing, are not turning out to be very good, which may be a benefit for world peace. Everybody marches off to war and their equipment isn't working. They might just say, bad idea, let's turn around. Now, GMO is banned in Bolivia, but apparently somebody has gone on down there and started planting GMO Roundup Ready corn, and that means it's only a matter of time due to wind and insects and birds before all of the corn in Bolivia is contaminated with the GMO pollen. Now, who would do a thing like that? Now, this brings us to a story that is coming up around Azure Farm. Now, Azure Farm is a large-scale organic farm operation. They've been in business for a lot of years. They have 2,000 acres of pristine, organically certified land in Sherman County, Oregon. And it makes a lie of the often promoted claim by the GMO industry that you can't do large-scale organic farming. It has to be GMO. It has to be chemically supported. And Azure Farms basically illustrated, yeah, you can do it. They're very popular in that part of the country. And so what has happened now is the state of Oregon, or rather the county of Sherman, where they're located, is getting ready to impose draconian weed management laws, which will include forcing Azure to spray their fields with Roundup. And of course, the instant they do that, they're no longer organic. They're no longer considered, they can't be certified organic. It will drive them out of business, or they'll have to adopt these Monsanto farming techniques and chemicals. And they're trying to raise public awareness about what's going on. But again, we're seeing a full-on display of what happens under fascism, where government and corporate interests are aligned together against the general population. Monsanto wants everyone to use their product, and the government says, yeah, we'll do it. We'll force them to use your product. No more natural organic farms, those things, they're just smelly places anyway. That's dictatorship. Azure wants to grow their food organically. American consumers want organic food. And we're being told by the government, no, you may not have organic food. You will get your food from the chemicals. Mahi dictum est. Which For those of you who don't speak Latin, that means I have spoken. Now here's an eye-opening article. This is coming out of the Journal of the American Medical Association. And they just published a peer-reviewed study that concluded 30% of the drugs approved by the FDA are seriously dangerous. They have safety problems. And this gets back to the article that we talked about last week, where much of the articles in medical journals that support certain medications are found to not be reproducible. In other words, they're fraudulent. Other investigators have taken the claims made in these articles and they've run through the tests and they can't get the same result. And remember, reproducibility is at the heart of the scientific method. If a result can't be reproduced, it must be dismissed as erroneous, if not fraudulent. And the FDA has had this look the other way attitude. We're just here to help the pharmaceutical companies sell medicine. We rely on the pharmaceutical company's own research to approve. And so now even the Journal of the American Medical Association is saying 30% of the FDA-approved drugs are seriously dangerous. They're risky. And illustrating that is this story coming out of Natural News, where apparently Zara Beatty, a 13-year-old girl from Wigton, Cumbria, got the HPV vaccine and has been struck by severe pain across her body, heart palpitations. And basically, it's like she's aging rapidly. She says right now she feels like an 80-year-old. And we've heard horror stories about the HPV vaccine many times before. Narcolepsy, other issues, permanent sterility. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Rob in Buffalo, New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just had a question for you. I know you've talked about the sunshine policy a lot lately. I was just wondering if you could go into more detail about how that would actually work. I know you said that they would consider reunification even. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. That's basically what it is, and I'm not exactly sure what the etymology of sunshine is in it, except bright new day. But yeah, both Koreas were seriously talking of an official end to the Korean War, which technically is still actually on. And they were going to just end that and say, okay, let's reunify the way Germany did. And they were well on their way to doing that, and the U.S. started getting on in and interfering and causing trouble, leading to the current crisis. And Moon Jae-in, the new president of South Korea, is saying he wants to go back to the sunshine policy. He's already said he's going to ask the United States to take their military out of South Korea, that he's confident South Korea can defend itself from North Korea, and that he wants to basically reach across the DMZ and talk to Kim Jong-un and say, we are being used by powers outside our country. Let's stop being so stupid about that. And, of course, if he does that, the U.S. has lost its main justification for going after North Korea, because they've been saying, we must protect our allies in South Korea. And the new president of South Korea is saying, we don't need you. We don't want you. And so that's what the sunshine policy is all about. Now, whether they'll reunify or not, we don't know. But certainly one part of the sunshine policy was to was to basically take down that DMZ. Dig up all the landmines, clean up the defoliant that they used on there, and actually start commerce between the two Koreas. Rail lines, highways, transportation, and try and use North Korea's labor force, which is large, to help boost both their economies. North Korea's labor force, South Korea's technology and investment, both Koreas could light up.
Okay. I also have another question for you. I know you've mentioned a few times recently, I know that the Trump presidency has been in a bit of an up and down with at least my feelings towards it, and I'm sure yours too,
yes.
But you mentioned that you'd almost rather see Bernie as president. I wonder if you truly meant that, or if that was more just, how set.
No, actually, to be very honest, if the DNC had not stolen the nomination away from Bernie Sanders, and given it to Hillary Clinton, I might seriously have decided to support Bernie Sanders instead of Donald Trump. But again, Hillary got the nomination, and we were looking at the lesser of two evils. And no matter how we vote, we still get evil, which is a stupid way to run a country. But I'm very disappointed by much of what Donald Trump has done his first 100 days. Now, that being said, we are starting to see signs of the Donald Trump that we saw on the campaign trail. The firing of Comey, he's getting ready to fire some more people in the White House. And I would still like to see him stand on up and keep more of his campaign promises, in particular pulling back from all these foreign interventions, which are not making us any friends around the world and ultimately could lead to a war that I think we're going to lose. And second, I want to start seeing some of these criminals in the Bush-Clinton duocracy start being arrested and sent to jail.
I agree. And finally, just in light of all the IT issues going on lately, all of your advice so far I thought has been very good. The only thing is you just mentioned MAC filtering. I'm not sure if I would suggest that, just in light of how easy it is to spoof a MAC address. So I'm not sure if I would suggest going through all the work of setting that up.
I definitely would. I mean, it's definitely one more layer.
It doesn't hurt. It definitely doesn't hurt.
No, it definitely doesn't hurt here. By the way, somebody else sent in a letter saying if you're looking at your bank website and you're not 100% sure it's real, type in a fake password, and if it accepts it, you know it's a fake website. That's another good little trick that we could have. Okay?
All right. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to grab Jeff in St. Paul, Minnesota real quick. Aloha. What is on your mind?
Hey, hi. You know, it's I got the AT&T, iPhone, and I lose your show about after 5 or 8 minutes, about 8-10 times a show. But that's do you know about this one video aggregator called blogdogsickle.blogspot?
No, I'm not familiar with it. As far as AT&T and the cell phone, yeah, I mean, all of these ISPs seem to be having a lot of trouble right now, and I'm sure the flood of added traffic from all this malware is not helping. Jeff, we're going to let you go, take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program today after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of the program today. Apparently there is a new outbreak of Ebola in the Republic of Congo. 3 people dead so far. Hopefully it won't go too far. Nasty, nasty stuff, those viruses. We're going to take 2 more phone calls for the rest of the show here. Fred in Iowa, thank you for waiting. What is on your mind?
Hello. You want to know what's on my mind?
Yes.
Truth.
I'm sorry?
Have any problem with that?
What do you want to talk about? Okay, I think you did.
Caller 2 calls back.
Okay, well, do you want to share something with us, or should I go on?
Yes. What I want to share is we can talk and denigrate till the cows come home about Jews and Christians. But do you know the reason why Tom Lockerbara is incarcerated? Do you know?
No, I do not.
Find out. The Vicar General. And that isn't of the Baptist or the Methodist or the Church of Christ. That's why he's behind bars. It is not about a gun or a pistola.
Oh.
Now, if we can't talk about it, oh no, all these hosts, oh no, we won't go there.
All right,
and then they
Fred,
turn around and yap on about Christians and Jews.
All right.
And denigrate them and denigrate them and denigrate them.
All right, Fred.
I am.
Fred, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to go with Steve in California. Steve, I hope you're in a calmer mood than our last caller. What is on your mind?
I think Fred's been nipping on the cough syrup a little bit too much today.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's got a big heart. Hey, a couple calls back, you had somebody had a connection problem, and the signal dropped on your show. May I suggest, and I'm not in any way trying to, I don't work for Grace Digital, but I have a Grace Digital Wi-Fi radio, and I love the radio, and I just program 10 stations, all talk radio, and I can flip back and forth really fast. And it buffers within 10 seconds, and I'm back onto a new channel, and I save my computer for other things. So your listeners may want to invest in a Grace Digital Wi-Fi radio. You can go to gracedigital.com. I bought mine on Amazon, not too bad price. Or you can go to C. Crane Company and buy one from them, and it's just under $100, I believe. But it's definitely an investment if you're into talk radio and want to find out what's going on. It's a good investment to make.
Okay, well, that's good advice here. I don't think we should all be running our entire lives through our computers. Using a computer to watch a TV show, that's a very expensive way to do it. Using a computer to listen to music or listen to radio, yeah, there are dedicated appliances for that are a lot less expensive and a lot easier to replace if they burn on out, as opposed to a computer system, which is a real headache when you finally do have to replace that. All right, well, Steve, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're coming up here on the end of the show. I got to head on out and do Jim Goddard's program. I am going to ask all of you to make a real effort to spread the word about whatreallyhappened.com and Republic Broadcasting, especially. Call up the talk radio shows, talk radio stations in your neighborhood. Point them at the republicbroadcasting.org website. We need to start spreading the truth of Republic Broadcasting across the land, and I need your help to do it. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.